Hey Spoon Inspired people, it's Imani here. Welcome back to my channel. Wow, I haven't said that in a long time, but I will do a separate video to update you on that. This is just a quick introduction to this video, which is a take 2 to my skirt with a vent tutorial. Thank you to everybody who made comments on the last attempt. Thank you for your feedback. I really appreciate it, and I taken it on board, and I have redone the video to now include contrasting fabric. Hooray! So hopefully it is much more clear for you to see. I've also included, as requested, the finishing of the hem, so you should now be able to complete the whole project from start to finish. Again, thank you so much for your feedback, and let's just get on with the video. So I've got my 2 back pieces here in the main fabric, and here also in the lining fabric. So 2 back pieces there, and I think I've done very well this time in getting some contrasting fabric. So for now we don't need the lining pieces, we're just going to start with the main fabric piece. So you should have your 2 back pieces, and they should be right sides facing. So your right sides are facing, and this should be your wrong side of the fabric, and ending, or no, starting where your zip is going to end. Place a pin there so that you can mark exactly where you're going to start sewing from. Start sewing along the seam allowance till you get to the top of your vent, and then you're going to continue on the seam allowance and stop just 1 centimeter away from the edge of the vent. So put a pin there just so that you know exactly where you're going to stop sewing. Okay, so now that you have done that stitching all the way down here and across and left a centimeter gap, you want to then get your scissors and make a little snip in this corner, and you're going to snip until you reach the stitching here. Don't go through the stitching at the corner, you just want to stop just before you get to the stitching. So I've done that, and you'll see that this will now open, and all that will allow you to do is, when you turn the fabric open, you should be able to see that you've got your seam open and then your vent to one side, and what you want to go and do is just press that seam flat. Okay, so I have pressed my seam flat. I've also pressed the vent a little bit as well, so that's lying flat, and my vent is facing that side to the right. So next you want to get your lining fabric, and we're going to place the lining fabric on the main fabric piece in a certain way, because we're going to make a decision on which part of the lining fabric we're going to use next, because we're going to do something different with that part. So this is what I mean. So with the right side facing you, place your lining fabric on top of your main fabric. So the right sides are facing me, and I've placed the lining fabric on top of my main fabric, and I'm going to choose the lining to my right. So the lining to your right, we're going to do something with that's different from the one on the left. So pick the lining to the right and move everything else away. So now in front of you, you've got your right hand side of the lining, and what you're going to do is you're going to fold the vent like this so that it's aligned with the side of the skirt, or with your center back, and you're going to use it as a template to cut around the vent. However, you're going to stop when you get to about 1 centimeter to the end and then cut across. So what I'm going to do is just put a pin at about 1 centimeter to the end, so I know I'm going to stop cutting when I get to that point. So the vent is going to come completely off, so you're just using it as a template to cut around it as straight as you can. And then you get to that 1 centimeter mark, and then you cut across. You should really measure it out, but I'm just eyeballing it. And I've cut that vent completely off. So you've got this little bit of extra, and all you do is just neaten that up. And what you'll find now is that your vent so now that you'll see that when you place your vents together, this one is a little bit longer than the other one, and that's exactly what you want. Lining fabric pieces facing right sides together, and you see clearly now where one side of the vent is a little bit longer than the other one. And what we're going to do is going to stitch these two lining pieces together. So this is the center back, starting again from where your zip ends. Find that point, sew down the seam, and what you want to do is stop when you get to this little corner where they intersect. Don't go all the way to the end, just place your pin here so that you know exactly where that is, and you will just stop when you get there. So I've got my lining pieces stitched together, and now I'm going to turn my lining piece so that the wrong sides are together and the right side is facing me. Wrong sides facing together. And what we're going to do now is we're going to attach the left side of the vent on the lining fabric to the left side of the vent on your outer fabric. So we're going to attach these two pieces together along the edge. Flip your lining over so that you pick up your outer fabric vent on the left side and your lining fabric on the left side, and you're placing them right sides together. So you've got them like that, edge to edge, and you're going to sew along 1 centimeter from the top all the way down to the hem. So now you should have something that looks like this. My lining is attached to the vent on the left hand side, and now we're going to do pretty much the same thing on the other. We're going to attach the lining to the right hand side of the vent. Actually, first of all, maybe just move this part out of the way. So then you flip it over, and then you're going to pick up both edges, and you're going to sew right along to the very end. And when you get here, you'll realize that you've got a natural corner. Makes a little V shape. You've got a little bit of corner here, and that's exactly where you want to stop sewing. So the lining has now been attached to both sides of the vent, and you can go ahead and press that. But before I press mine, I'm just going to neaten up this area, which is what you need to do next. And if I zoom in a little bit, zoom in, I'll show you how we're going to do that. So flip over the right side of the lining, and you'll see that little corner bit where we stopped the stitching. It's all a little bit gathered and not lying flat, and in order to let it lie flat, you're going to just snip to the stitching. So we're going to do just a little snip in that corner, once I can find it, it's a bit fiddly. And you're only snipping the lining, not the outer fabric, just the lining, and you're just snipping to the stitching in the corner there. Okay, so that's one side done. So that's the right side, and on the other side too, turn it over, you'll see a little corner here that needs snipping, and we're just snipping the lining, nothing else. And so hopefully everything should now lie a little bit flatter. Okay, so we've got to the final part of at least attaching the vent, and that's this bit here, and we're going to be attaching that from the inside. So open up the lining, and you'll see this little section here, and you've got from the corner that you snipped here and from this corner, you're just going to sew from corner to corner. And what you need to do is just pin it first, and then just turn it over and just keep checking that it's, you know, it's neat and it's catching the corners as best you can. So once you've done that and you've pressed everything neatly, we will go on to the neatening of the hem, which is the part of the tutorial that I didn't do in the last video. So for those who are asking for it, here it comes. So the skirt is folded right side out. We've got our vents, and we're taking the part that is lying on top, and you'll notice the fold that you've got here. When you open it up, it gives you a crease. So that crease is important because we're going to be stitching from that crease. And what you want to do is fold the fabric through, pick up that fold. Okay, so we've got that fold, and let's just put a pin in place. Pull the fabric through so that the hem is fully aligned at the bottom. That's really important. Make sure it's still aligned at the bottom. And what we're going to do is stitch. Well, first of all, decide how long your hem is going to be. Mine is about 3 centimeters long. So let's say that's a 3 centimeter mark. I'm going to start from there. Start stitching from that corner, that crease. Stitch across until I get to this stitching line where we attach the lining to the outer fabric. Just before that stitching line, stop before that stitching line, and carry on stitching down the line until you reach about 1 centimeter just before the edge of the hem. Once you've reached that point, continue sewing across the fabric for maybe another 3 centimeters, and just stop. So once you've done that stitching and you pull the fabric through, you should have the start of a nice little corner. So now that you've got the start of your hem, you want to make sure that your tape measure is handy, and just continue to measure up your hem. Get your lining in the inside of the hem, just coax it in, make sure that it's nicely aligned, and just press along, and do that all the way around the skirt hem. So one little tip as you are going around the hem, make sure that it's even when you get to the other side of the vent. just give it a quick measure, and I realized that mine was about 4 centimeters instead of the 3.5, which is fine. You might find that yours is a little bit uneven as well. And all you have to do is, when you get to this point, is fold it in to ensure that it is even. And you can see that I've already done mine, and just press it so that you've got that mark, so you know that in order for your hem to be even, it's at this point that you need to fold your hem in. So on the other side of the vent, you want to turn the skirt through so that you've picked up the lining and the hem, and we're just going to attach the lining to the hem of the main fabric by sewing just a centimeter above the edge and just sewing across, maybe about 10 to 15 centimeters. You just want to ensure that you're not sewing all the way to your seam here. Just sew maybe 10 or 15 centimeters along. So that's done. I've sewn across, attaching the lining to the main fabric. And what you're going to do next is, if you remember that crease that you made when you pressed the hem over, ensuring that you had the right measurement at the edge, just fold along that crease. Fold the fabric over along that crease, like that. So you fold it over, making sure that you're on that crease that you've made. And what you're going to do next is just sew from the top to the bottom edge, but you're going to sew in between this stitch line and the edge of the fabric. So somewhere in between there, just sew along from the top to the end, and all that will do is just ensure that the fabric is attached. So that's done. I've done my stitching line, and now we can bag the corner through. Okay, so how are we doing? There's quite a few steps, I know, but we are nearly there, I promise. So the next technique we're going to do is just securing the hem so that it doesn't just fall open whenever it needs to. So we're going to secure it at each seam. So here's a seam I've got here, and what you're going to do is, hopefully you can see that, pick up the seam. Let me take my hand out. Take my hand out of the way. Pick up the seams from the inside. So I'm going to sew from halfway down, so starting from about here, all the way down to the edge. So I've done that little stitch to the edge, and you'll find now that when you close the hem, it's secure and it's not just going to open up. And the reason why you only stitch halfway is that we're going to use this part to attach the lining. So here we are at our final stage. I've got my skirt completely turned to the wrong side, and you're going to attach the lining to the fabric at the hem, making sure that the lining part is underneath. So you've got your lining underneath, you've got your fabric on the top, and the trick is to ensure that some of the lining is sticking out. So make sure you can see some of the lining, and that will ensure that when you do turn it over, you don't see the lining from the right side. And so as you can see, we've left that space here on the hem, and we're just going to attach the lining to the fabric. So I've pinned the lining all the way around the hem, but what you do need to remember is that you need to leave about a 15 centimeter gap in order for you to bag the skirt out so that it's the right way around. If you sew along all the way around the hem, you will not be able to bag the skirt to the right side anymore. So find a space between the seams and maybe put a pin just to mark where you will stop sewing and then start again maybe 15-20 centimeters further along, so you'll leave a gap in between, and later on you will just be able to pull through and bring the skirt to the right side out. Oh, and there is just one final tiny little step. A little bit of hand stitching is that gap that you made in order to bag the skirt to the right side. Just do some blind hem stitching along there just to close that up, and that's it. Then you've done it. You should have your nicely vented skirt. Thanks again for watching. I hope that was much more clear for you. Like I said, I will be back again with another video to update you on why I've been away for so long, but I wanted to get this video out to you as soon as possible. See you on the next video, and keep taking spirit inspired actions.